Hey guys, I'm back in the front of the room for this one just because I need a little bit more board space and I need to be the camera to be a little bit farther away from me. I haven't posted in a few days because I wanted to make sure that in every class we were all caught up completely before I started giving my final thoughts in terms of, the story itself of A Christmas Carol and just in terms of what I hoped to accomplish by giving you a book that seemed like it was a little bit out of your comfortable reading range with all the extra vocabulary and all the extra everything. I wanted to really drive home the point, not only because this is a great story by a great author, but I also wanted to reinforce the point that if you understand the structure of what you're reading, it's much easier to understand, connect with, and frankly enjoy reading a story. And really learn more about how characters in stories and how we as people look to move forward as people or as characters in stories. Because remember, characters in stories are people. They might be fictional or they might be real, but in any case, they're people most of the time, or they're animals who have, human tendencies. You know what I mean. But I want to really reinforce it, again, for the purposes of not only understanding literature, but understanding ourselves, because I still had quite a few people receive failing grades, or I should say earn failing grades in my class at the 5-week mark. And it's sort of getting to be really ridiculous. Like it was maddening, and then it was frustrating. Now it's a little sad that I can't get you guys to make decisions to change who you are when you know that what you're doing isn't working and it's making it less enjoyable. Because learning should be really, really a lot of fun. And it can be a lot of fun, but you have to set yourself up for it. You have to be able and be willing to change what you're doing if what you're doing is not working. And a lot of you have just been stubborn and unwilling. And so people who find themselves in trouble a lot, you're going to find yourselves in trouble a lot. And you're going to keep saying stuff like, it's not fair, it wasn't me, it wasn't... You're going to find yourself in trouble a lot until you decide to change something. Hey, until you decide to change something. Isn't that what a climax is all about? And don't we have to get to a decision point if in our lives we have these conflicts that change our trajectory, our path, our plot in our life? In order to get to the resolution, which we know is where everything levels out again at the end, a lot of you are missing a crucial step. The real turning point is a climax in your life. It's a decision that we make that makes the rest of the stuff that happens in that situation have to happen the way it does. So we can look around and say, hey, I'm on the other side better again. The problem is that most of you don't ever bother to get out of this cycle. A lot of very smart men and women who are thinkers, some of the best thinkers we know from history, have used the phrase, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results. See, all you're doing is you're doing this plot and conflict cycle. But you're never actually getting to the point where you make a decision to change something that can ultimately lead to this resolution, because the resolution only comes into play, or I should say, being able to stop and take a look back and actually learn something that changes us. To actually learn something that changes us requires that this decision actually be made. And most of you just refuse to make it. And, part of my job is to make you ready for life. College and career ready, but really what that means is life ready. And I gave some of you classes this secret. If you're on time, if you're prepared, and you're respectful, people will want to have you around. Because the world has got enough jerks, frankly. And it just so happens that we're talking about, in this book, in this story by Charles Dickens, second chances at being a better person, at being somebody who people want to be around instead of somebody people talk about as being a nuisance, or as being a jerk, or as being a problem in society. You have the power to change, but most of you just don't feel like it. You feel like maybe that's, you shouldn't have to work at it. I got news for you. Everybody has to work at it. Everybody has to work at everything. Life isn't easy. If you're one of those people who says, school's not easy for me, school's too hard, school's too... Well, what are you doing to fix it? If school is really hard for you, and you keep doing the same thing that's gotten you a failing grade and moving not ahead in school, if you keep doing the same thing, you're never going to move ahead. It's not rocket science. It's life. If something keeps happening over and over and over again, until you change it, it's going to keep happening over and over and over again. I don't think any of you are without the power to change your situation. I've had students improve multiple grade levels in multiple years. And it's not a secret, it's hard work. And for some of you who get in trouble a lot, it's going to take a lot of hard work to change your reputation so you don't get blamed even when it isn't you. My grandfather used to say, if you hang around a barn long enough, you're going to start to smell like poop. Right? Even if you're not doing the pooping, if you're around all the poop, you're going to smell like it. It's the same thing. If you're around people who make you act a certain way that you don't really like, maybe it's time to move away from those people. Who are you trying to impress? If they're not the type of people that you want to be around anyway, why are you trying to impress them? I don't get it. But let's make this a little bit more about the literature, shall we? And less about your grades. Because we can learn that lesson just by looking at this. Now, not all the classes got to finish this. Some of them did. But I want to really just illustrate to you one last time how being able to identify one thing in the whole scheme, and this will also help you fill in that inside page of your organizers, which are due tomorrow. Okay? Your Unit 3 packet is due tomorrow, and that first page where it has this plot map, plot structure, and space for you to write in what all the different parts are, that's what I'm going to be illustrating for you right now. And this is, again, it goes back to how we learn in life and in literature. Well, this book was a bit higher than your reading level, your typical reading level. So we've talked about strategies for being able to understand something even when it seems a little bit beyond us. If we understand the structure, eventually we'll be able to work out logically what everything is based on just being able to identify one key thing. Remember we said conflict was really at the heart of all of this? If you can identify the main conflict, because remember, main conflict in general, the main conflict is what makes the plot change. It's what changes what we do. Either it's the change is forced on us, or we are forced, or we make a change that forces the situation to be different. Okay? Well, in this case, the main conflict occurs on page 25 for you, and the actual line that it occurs on is when Marley tells Scrooge these words, and they're posted down below, so I'm not going to take time and repeat them so that you can write them down. They're posted right below this video. Marley says, "You will be haunted by 3 spirits." Well, we can't just say that that's the only conflict that's there, because, I mean, that's the what that's going to happen, but the conflict has its root somewhere. Scrooge needs to change, or he's going to spend his eternity in chains just like Marley's. Well, it's usually pretty easy for us to identify the main conflict. It was easy for you to identify the main conflict, right? Scrooge isn't terribly happy about it. When we're in conflicts, we're not terribly happy about it. I mean, there is such a thing as a good conflict, but conflict by its very nature is an emotional fight. So it was easy for us to identify it because we've all been in conflicts before. Well, if that's the main conflict, we know that that's right here. And if we know that that happens on page 25 when the main conflict is introduced, well, then we know that everything that happened before 25 is the exposition. And we know that exposition is used in order to help us meet the characters and figure out any past conflicts that they've been in. Well, then what should we be learning from that exposition in the text? We should be learning some stuff about Scrooge and his previous conflicts so that we can understand him and be able to connect to him. That's our whole point, right? So, we learned that Scrooge is a jerk and he hates Christmas. Granted, there are a lot of things that show us this, but that's the basic gist. He's a jerk and he hates Christmas. We also have a strong reaction to him because he's rich. If he were poor, we wouldn't care that he didn't give money. But he's rich and he still ignores the problems of others. So, his only real friend is his money, even though he doesn't even use that. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but we find that out about him. We couldn't actually talk about exposition and leave out the person that brings up the main conflict, that brings about the main conflict. And that's Jacob Marley. Now we meet Marley, and he introduces us to the fact, and Scrooge to the fact, that he's going to be haunted by three spirits. Well, we also need to know why it's so bad. Well, we find out that Marley and Scrooge, Scrooge has got the same length chain that Marley does, but he had that 7 years ago, and he's just been adding to it. Right? So we know that Scrooge and Marley are similar, but Scrooge's chain is longer. So that's basically what we got out of the exposition. Well, if we know that he's going to be haunted by three spirits, and the reason that he has, and that every conflict has a resolution, is that he needs to change, well, guess what? The resolution of this story has to be when we find out that Scrooge has made a definite change. So I'm going to skip some blocks here. The resolution is from a direct quote on page 121 in your version. It said, "He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as this good old town has ever seen." That indicates to us that he really has changed. So we know what the resolution is. We know where it's come about. But that means that we've got something that has had a decision that's had to be made that led him there. Because he's not in the same place as he was. So what was the decision that was made? If we know that the resolution is that he became a good man, we have to trace back to where he made the decision to be a good man. So the climax then is on page 110 at the very end of stave 4 when he says, "I will honor Christmas in my heart and try to keep it all the year." Wow, what a big change. He's made a decision in his life to be different. That's the climax. So since we've identified the climax, we've identified where the resolution begins, we've identified where the main conflict is introduced, we know all of the different sections of the book simply because we were able to identify that main conflict. Do you see how one piece of information now unlocks the world to us just by knowing the structure? See, now we know that the rising action was that the spirit of Christmas past showed him how he had changed, because he wasn't always like that. And the spirit of Christmas present showed him the example. This is what people should be doing now. And the spirit of Christmas yet to come shows him, look, these are the consequences if you don't change back. That all leads to his decision to say, "I will honor Christmas." The following action is all the stuff that happens the day of. It's all the stuff that he realizes he's been so horrible to these certain people, so he has to make amends right away. Right away with his nephew and with Cratchit. He has to do that right away. But where we truly find that he's made the decision is that it stays that way. So we find out that through this course of Scrooge leading to being in the main conflict and that changing him, he's only been able to change who he was as a result of this conflict being resolved. That's the only time that we change as people, is when a conflict is resolved, we can look back. And ultimately, once we take a look at what's coming up over and over and over again, we get out of it something that we can really use. A main idea that was part of the author's original purpose and design for what we're doing. See, Charles Dickens, we remember from his history, had a very good reason for writing this. All of these subjects really hit home with him. Hopefully this all made sense to you. This is why we do this. We practice in order for you to be able to do it on your own. See, but if you're not committed to the process and understanding and doing all the work that you need to do, all this is meaningless. But hopefully you're starting to see why we keep going over this. Because I want you guys to be successful on your own later in life, by yourself, so that, really you can take this with you the rest of your life. Hopefully you take the lessons from this with you for the rest of your life. Hopefully